Doug Ford himself, according to Globe and Mail reporting, was a hash dealer when he was in high school, and the Ford family has a long history in drug dealing and crime. So they act like they're the tough on crime people. They are these Republican-style conservatives. They are very proudly pro-Donald Trump. He says that he would never waver and he would always support Donald Trump. His wife and his daughters were wearing MAGA hats and flying American flags.
The region of Waterloo's police budget is bigger than the city of Kitchener's budget.
Ontario very shortly. Please, if you are a Ontarian and you're listening to this, it's I don't think enough for you to simply vote for someone other than Doug Ford. You should probably get your friends and family to do that as well. He will win once again if everyone stays home, if people don't stay home, if there's a large contingent of people who come out, especially people who don't regularly vote. There is a chance to knock him out, but as of right now, the polling is not very positive in that respect. And this story is currently making the news today. Ontario government sponsors Sean Hannity's show on Fox News for Trump and Musk interview. The Ontario government sponsored Fox News host Sean Hannity primetime interview with Donald Trump and Elon Musk, part of the multi-million-dollar advertising campaign the province is rolling out as US President repeatedly threatens to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. While the campaign is expected to cost tens of millions of dollars, the province is refusing to say how much money is being spent on the ads, including the one for Hannity, one of the highest-rated US cable shows. Fox did not respond to a request for comment about the cost and frequency of the ads. The sponsorship ad aired during Tuesday night's Hannity before Mr. Hannity's pre-recorded interview with Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk, the tech entrepreneur and ketamine addict, Tesla CEO who leads the newly created Department of Government Efficiency initiative for the Trump administration. This program is brought to you by Ontario, Canada, your trusted economic partner, the ad said, accompanied by Ontario, Canada logo with a maple leaf. It was followed by an Ontario government commercial that showcases the strong economic ties between the two countries. I don't know if I can recall the last time a nation has had Stockholm syndrome like this. It's profoundly sad. And it was sad a long time ago. Now it's getting frightening. What are you doing? They know. Like, as weird and silly sometimes as Trump can seem, he does have people surrounding him who can tell him the very basics. Maybe with pictures, maybe with, like, you know, large sounds or flashing colors or whatever he needs. But he has people on his team who can tell him, hey, by the way, this is your largest trading partner. This is not how tariffs work. We get the majority of our energy, especially our natural gas, from Canada. There are multiple states that require the energy provided to us by Ontario, Canada, in order to have the lights on. It would be a disaster to continue pushing this and going down this road. We shouldn't do this. He knows that. It's one of the reasons why he clearly just wants people to bend the knee over and over. Why are you spending tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money at a time when you're constantly talking about how you don't have money for, say, mental health services, shit like that? Why are you at a time like now suddenly deciding, hey, by the way, we should spend money just to remind them, just to give them a good old, hey, by the way, we love you. Do you love us? We hope so. So, you know, we're your good old friends, the Canadians. Don't fuck us too much. A little bit, you know, a little tease is fine, but otherwise, you know, be good. This is such a ridiculous, like, it's not going to work. You could spend $100 million on ads on all of the American networks, on all of the primetime shows. You're not going to have, like, was this in the hopes that Donald Trump would watch it? Because he does watch Fox News and he'd probably watch his own interview. And then he saw that ad and he's like, oh, beloved trading partner. Close relationship, economic ties. What have I been smoking? You know, or what vast quantities of ketamine has Elon been offering me? Spokesperson for the Ontario Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford's re-election campaign said the sponsorship is part of the province's original deal with Fox and that no new money is being spent during the campaign, which will see Ontarians go to the polls on February 27th. As part of our US-based marketing campaign that's raising awareness about Ontario's importance to for America's economic success, Fox offered the province the opportunity to sponsor programming. This was included as part of an overall ad that was finalized weeks ago. With President Trump threatening tariffs that would devastate Ontario's economy, we will do whatever we can to stand up for Canadians. Except actually that, you know, because, like, I've seen what other countries that are having very similar situations happen to them, say Mexico, and what Claudia Sheinbaum is doing right now. She is not accepting any shit Like, she's not just sitting there being like, oh, please, Trump, we love you. You love us. Our relationship is very important. We share one of the world's largest borders. We are very economically intertwined. Don't do this, please. It would be really bad for businesses, for citizens. It's going to raise the cost of consumer goods. Terrible idea. Don't do that. You're just calling it like it is. She's like, we get the majority of our illegal weapons from America, and when they send us all these guns, we're not imposing tariffs on them as a result of that. So, what the fuck is he thinking? If they're going to impose tariffs on us, we're going to impose tariffs on them. Simple as. If they're going to designate Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations that allow the U.S. forces to try and think that they can just come into Mexico and then ignore the autonomy of a sovereign state, no, we're actually going to try and update our constitution now to be able to say that you can't do that. No one can. You're not allowed to just enter the country with guns and say, oh, no, this is not an invasion. We're just going after the terrorists, you see, in the same way that, America does as a pretense to most of its imperialism or invasion of illegal invasions, I should say, of other countries. So, yeah, there's absolutely no amount of ad spending that's going to make them see that, because, again, they know Trump wants people to bend the knee. It's performative at best. Like, what just happened? Trump was like, hey, we're going to impose 25% tariffs tomorrow. And then all of a sudden he gets a couple phone calls with Mexico, a couple phone calls with Trudeau. And in both cases, it's like, hey, we're not going to do it for 30 days now. We're going to pause the tariffs because they've made some promises. Now, they are promises that were already made months ago. In fact, I think Trudeau had made that promise as far back as December. And so it's absolutely nothing new that they've offered us, except for the fact that there's going to be a ceremonial position created in Canada called the fentanyl czar. What will he do? We don't know. Will he try and stop the fentanyl? Will he try to do all the fentanyl? There's just no way of knowing. Meanwhile, Mexico's like, okay, we agree. We will send 15,000 or 10,000 troops to the border. And it's like, even though 2 years ago, Claudia Sheinbaum already announced they were sending 15,000 troops to the border. Again, ceremonial. It's all performative. Less than 1% of the fentanyl that goes into the United States comes in through Canada. There's no way for us to stop the crisis we don't create, and it's just utterly absurd to continue doing that. I mean, if you watch John Oliver, his latest episode goes through this in detail, and he's like, last year border seizures showed like less than 0.2% of the fentanyl that came into America came from Canada. It's ridiculous, but sure. Whatever you need to feel happy, but stop trying to, play ball with a bully. He doesn't want to play with you. Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie's campaign slammed the ad, saying Mr. Ford is wasting taxpayer money. Doug Ford thinks the rules don't apply to him. He spent millions of taxpayer dollars to run advertisements, hire lobbyists. During the unnecessary election he called, he's taking voters for granted, talking to Fox News and campaigning in the U.S. Ontario NDP leader Merritt Stiles said Ford's overtures are clearly falling flat. His trip to Washington accomplished nothing, and Trump still has no idea who he is. Probably. As Premier, I'd be focused on defending every job and working with the industry to help blunt the impact of tariffs. Ford threw us this election, and he's using U.S. media as a campaign prop. The reason I'm focusing on this story, by the way, not a lot of the ones that obviously discuss me about Doug Ford, is that this one is actually getting some traction right now and pissing a lot of people off. So maybe this is what it'll take to make a bunch of people wake up and realize that Ford Nation actually fucking sucks. There is the leaked tape that came out recently about Doug Ford, being really happy that Trump won the election. That one, hurt him a little bit. There's the other story that just came out the other day about how he was caught in a recording. Ontario PC leader Doug Ford reportedly joked about bringing back the death penalty during a campaign speech in London, Ontario. The Toronto Star first reported the news, and he talked about empowering judges to, quote, send them to Sparky, aka the electric chair, after Canada abolished the death penalty decades ago. A spokesperson for the PC party shared a statement Thursday evening clarifying the remarks. He made a poor taste joke out of the frustration for many people affected by violent criminals out on our streets because the federal government's broken bail system and soft on crime policies. Great spin. Did the rug pull, but he's denying that. He's denying, that he himself had inside knowledge that this was going to happen, and people did eventually just pull out a lot of money.
There was even a community note underneath Milei's post, warning users to, quote, verify before interacting with the project, because it looked suspiciously like what's known in the crypto community as a rug pull, where scammers pump up a cryptocurrency, often via some celebrity endorsement, before suddenly selling all their coins, cashing out and crashing the coin. Nonetheless, the post stayed up for 5 hours or so, and Milei apparently confirmed his support for the token to Bloomberg Linear. So people piled in. In just a couple of hours, some 44,000 of Milei's supporters, and anyone else hoping to capitalise on Milei's endorsement, invested millions of dollars in the coin, and its value skyrocketed. At its peak, the market capitalisation, that is, the total value of all coins in circulation, reached $4.5 billion, up from less than $200 million before Milei's endorsement.
Now, I gotta be honest, like, at what point are you sitting there on some massive wallet where, again, when you started out, it was 200 million, so you could have put in, let's say, $500,000. That $500,000 is suddenly worth something like $15 million or $20 million. And you're just sitting there watching rubes, just rubes, so many rubes, internationally, globally, pouring cash into this, sitting there and being like, at any point, I could hit the sell button. And yes, that will start what will appear to be a rug pull, because by doing that, people will notice all of a sudden the value dips rapidly, and then other people will thinking the same thing, because everyone's sitting on this. Everyone's just sitting there, and whoever does it first, right? Who's going to be the first one to hit sell? And if you hit sell and you see it go like that, and then other people see that, like, oh my God, they're pulling. We all pull at once. So, but at what point does the greed hit you? Because you're just sitting there waiting, and you're like, ooh, my tokens are worth $2 million. That's crazy. $10 million. Oh my God, I could retire for the rest of my life. $25 million. Holy shit, I could retire for the rest of my life, and I can almost hunt humans for sport. Oh, it's at $40 million. Holy shit, I only put a couple $100,000 and I'm worth $40 million right now. Sell. And you hit that sell button, and everyone else who's watching it at the same time sees it go blip for the first time, instead of going oh, just to the moon kind of shit, and all of a sudden it goes just like that, because one big holder suddenly just sold a bunch, and then every other big holder is like, well, I don't want to be the last one holding the bag. That's not how the scam works, baby. I gotta get out too. Everyone hits the sell button, and that's what this is. If you're wondering why it just suddenly goes bam, 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 bam. If you're still holding at this point, right around here, oh, like, this is when, you may have been a true believer, I think, at that point. If you're a big, like, wallet holder, but you're still, like, holding out, you're like, oh, to the moon still, comrades, come on, hold, bam, oh God, fuck it. I only made $26, but only minutes ago. If you had sold at this point, you could have made millions. No one wants to be the last man standing, right?
3 hours after it started.
That's why they call it a last man standing scam. It all makes sense.
Trading, however, those insiders we mentioned earlier suddenly sold all their coins, with just 8 insiders together raking in about $107 million, according to Cointelegraph. This obviously wiped out the token's value, which fell by 94%, leaving the vast majority of the 44,000 who invested after Milei's post with massive losses. A couple of hours into the crash, Milei deleted his post endorsing the coin and created a new post acknowledging his support of the coin, but insisted that he obviously had no connection to it whatsoever, and that he wasn't aware of the details of the project beforehand.
Why would you do this at all? Why involve yourself? See, like, I didn't endorse the Haktua coin, and then after the Haktua coin crashed, I wouldn't have ever thought to myself, you know what I really think I should do with my social media platform, my voice, if you will? I should go online and I should go support it. I should go be like, you know what? I have no endorsement and nothing involved in this Haktua coin, but I don't know. Seems stable. Get in, I guess. I've got nothing associated with this whatsoever. I do not in any way. I cannot financially gain from this. I'm a good citizen, all right? Or in this case, a good president. I'm just taking it upon myself to let y'all know. Get in.
True to form, Milei finished off his post by blaming the, quote, filthy rats of the political caste who want to take advantage of this.
See, it's the left, it's the commies, it's the radical fucking socialists, it's the rats, the cockroaches. I told you. Yeah, I'm not involved in any way in some massive crypto rug pull. I just, out of nowhere, felt it was my duty, after previously endorsing this random coin, this shit coin that is now tanking, to say that you should still invest real money into it. Why not? And also, if everything doesn't work out, it's the rats. The rats did this. Fucking rats.
Situation to do harm. Unfortunately for Milei, this wasn't enough to quiet the subsequent uproar. For starters, even if Milei is telling the truth here, and he genuinely didn't know about the coin, it's not a great look that he, as both a seasoned economist and the president of Argentina, publicly endorsed what looks like, at best, a risky asset, at worst, a scam, without understanding what it was,
Just a
and
scam.
only withdrew his support after the coin had crashed. But on top of that, there are a couple of reasons that Milei's excuse that he didn't really understand the coin doesn't quite add up. For starters, Milei seemed relatively well acquainted with both the company that sponsored the coin, KIP Protocol, and the company that actually carried out the launch, a relatively unknown company called Kelsia Ventures. Milei met with KIP Protocol representatives in October, where the company informed him about the Libra, and KIP then joined Buenos Aires City Government Blockchain Committee in January. Similarly, the guy who runs Kelsia Ventures, an American called Hayden Davis, who also seems to have made a lot of money off the coin, claims to be an advisor of Milei's, and apparently
I'm sorry, but why does every single crypto bro look like this? If you showed me this photo, just in and of itself, alone, without any context, you're like, what does this guy do for a living? I don't know. Crypto, juicing, NFTs, probably. Friends, I'm joined today by two very special guests, Brooklin Wallace. She is the NDP candidate for Kitchener Centre in the upcoming Ontario election, who's fought for affordable housing, walkable cities, climate change, LGBTQ plus rights, representation, and solving the unhoused crisis as cornerstones of her political and social career. And Franklin Domenic, a school teacher to children and a TikTok megastar to the internet, who advocates on the behalf of leftist issues and causes. Welcome to both of you.
The reason I'm running, or the reason I ran for city council a couple years ago, reason I'm in politics in the first place, was because there was an encampment of 6 people that was evicted using actual bulldozers. And I got mad, and no one could stop me from trying to fight that. I spent the next year or so looking up how to run for office, looking up how to actually solve the housing crisis. And then ran for office, was a very strong runner-up. And since then, I've been involved in a lot of different aspects of this community here in Kitchener. Like you said, affordable housing is a big thing for me, obviously. And I started the local chapter of the Acorn Tenants Union with some friends. After some affordable housing was bulldozed or approved to be bulldozed for a parking lot.
I don't know who might be watching this internationally. What's the deal with Doug Ford? Is he a baddie?
Oh, God almighty. So the problem with Doug Ford is that, like, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, he's our Trump. He's not our Trump. Doug Ford, and I did a whole video on this, Doug Ford fundamentally has daddy issues. And that is kind of where a lot of his desire to be loved by the rich and powerful come in. So Doug Ford's father was an MP, or MPP, sorry, under Mike Harris, who was probably the worst premier in Ontario history, second only to Doug, potentially.
Yeah.
And his brother was the mayor of Toronto, as many people internationally would know him as the crack smoking mayor, although I really don't like to demonize Rob's addiction. The problem is that Doug Ford himself, according to Globe and Mail reporting, was a hash dealer when he was in high school, and the Ford family has a long history in drug dealing and crime. So they act like they're the tough on crime people. They are these Republican-style conservatives. They are very proudly pro-Donald Trump. He says that he would never waver and he would always support Donald Trump. His wife and his daughters were wearing MAGA hats and flying American flags when Trump was elected and during his inauguration. So Ford tries to present himself as an everyman, and he does a really good job at that. He's really good at retail politics. When he was a city councilor, if you had a pothole that needed to be filled and you called his phone number, he would make sure that the city came over and did it. So when we talk about Ford as a politician, I am sure that as a city councilor, he was, for the individuals, a great city councilor. The problem is that his type of retail politics and folksy behavior, when it's escalated to the provincial level, enables his poor behaviors. It allows him to get away with a lot of the abuse. Like he really is there for his billionaire developer buddies. The 413 highway that he tried to push through was only going to save people on average 30 seconds on their commute. It was going to cost us billions of dollars paid through the Greenbelt, destroy farmland. And it turns out that the majority of the properties that were owned along the Greenbelt were owned by developers who either attended his daughter's stag and doe or were at his daughter's wedding. So like it's very easy to keep piling on the layers of corruption. Like when I say that I made a whole video just on his family's history of crime, I literally didn't even talk about the stuff that he did while he was in office. And I'm doing a video right now just about the Greenbelt, and I am already finding myself up to the limits of how long I want the video to be without mentioning literally every scandal that was involved, including them moving the boundaries around golf courses that were owned by his conservative MPP's parents, or different donors who basically said, hey, move this thing because I have a buddy who owns this parcel of land and it'll make it more valuable. Like literally they have evidence of this, and there's RCMP investigations into all of this. So like, once again, I don't want to call him our Trump because they're really not the same in that regard. But he is the traditional sleazy businessman, used cars salesman who was born into a wealthy family and has pretended that he's just like some average everyday person who has realistically has the reading level of a potentially second grader. Like he's not. I don't want to say he's dumb.
Evidence of that.
In terms of both, like, his history in crime, his family being corrupt, him being, beholden to developers and stuff like that. But it seems like time and time again, he just pulls it off.
In 2015, he was elected in 2018, he was elected because people basically said, well, what's the worst that could happen? And you know what? Like that happens all the time. Like both leftist and right-wing
really hated the liberal government beforehand.
Mm.
And honestly, I think what really did win in there was when she privatized Hydro One, that basically removed any credibility she had with both left-wing and center voters. And so people abandoned the party in droves. And you would think that that would have been a boon for the NDP, but Horvath was, in my opinion, particularly unlikable. And I don't know why. I've always been a fan of Merritt. When Merritt was the NDP education critic, I spoke very positively of her, but she has so far been unable to grab the wider attention of the population. And there's a few reasons for that. It might be the same reasons that Bonnie hasn't been able to. But the way that I see it personally is that neither the NDP or the Liberals are doing a good enough job personally in terms of inspiring people and making them believe that there is a better option out there. People would rather go with the devil that they know than the devil that they don't. And that's kind of how I see this all falling. And also Doug Ford is a political behemoth. He has the legacy name, just like Trudeau had the legacy name. And the RCMP investigation is still ongoing, and sooner or later, Ford will hit that tipping point where the popularity will collapse. We almost had a general strike last year because of his use of the notwithstanding clause. So something will give sooner or later, and I'm worried that the NDP and the Liberals are just waiting for Doug to leave, as opposed to providing a serious alternative. That's just how I see it.
So, just off from the start, I'm going to make sure that it is clear that the opinions of the other people in this video are not the opinions of myself or the NDP. But I see what you mean in a lot of the things that you say. The inspiration is a big thing. I think there is also just a massive misinformation campaign surrounding whose job is what, whose job is whose. The conservative voters that I've spoken to while canvassing, when I talk about healthcare collapsing and when I talk about the education system, they are immediately blaming Trudeau every single time. When that's not his job. And I say that and they just go, no, you don't know what you're talking about.
The people in charge of the campaigns, they said, do what they did in France. We shouldn't be running candidates against each other in ridings where the Conservatives are first or second. If it's a riding like, once again, Kitchener Centre, where it's going to be between the Greens or the NDP or the Liberals anyway, sure, let's have a fair race. But if there's a riding where it's super duper tight and the NDP are polling at 9%, or it's a Liberal with a riding, the Liberals are polling at 9%, let's not run against each other. Like, for example, there is no reason why I'm forgetting his name, but up in Parry Sound, Muskoka, they almost beat the Conservatives for the first time ever, the Greens. There is no reason why we should be, as leftist, centrist, splitting the vote and allowing for the Conservatives to ride up the middle and win those ridings. So if there was an agreement put in place, the parties think to themselves, oh, well, then people aren't going to be able to differentiate us between each other, and people aren't going to take us seriously, and they're going to think, oh, why would I vote for them at all? But I don't think that's the case at all. I think that there is an appetite for people to have an actual vote that will matter in terms of beating Ford, but people aren't showing up to the polls because they don't see it happening. And so personally, if I was in charge of either of those parties, I would be doing everything in my power to enable a victory, even if they weren't going to win the most amount of seats. If they could knock Ford down to a minority, that's it. Ford can't govern in a minority. But both of the parties want to win their majority, and they both think it's
election reform.
And that's the thing. If we work together and we can get Ford out of office, and there is a coalition between the two parties, and electoral reform is pushed through, we can have a better province. But everybody is so obsessed with winning their majorities that we are missing the forest for the trees.
Is there a problem with youth turnout as well, like most elections?
There's a massive problem with turnout in general.
Okay.
Yeah, Ontario turnout in the last election was abysmal, and because this one's happening in the winter, it's going to also, and
it's going to be even worse.
Oh wow! So what are we talking? Are we talking like 50%, more or less?
Sorry, would you say 15?
50. Are you looking at like 50%
the
turnout?
last election was like a 37% voter turnout.
Oh my! Okay.
Yeah. Was it 37?
It was under 40, right?
I thought that was the municipal. I thought it was like 60%.
For the I want to jump out of Discord and check real quick, but I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't remember.
You know what? I can have it appear on the screen right now, so it'll be on YouTube. Yeah, the number that is
no matter
right here.
Either number we said that's too low.
To my recollection, it was the lowest voter turnout in my lifetime. To my recollection,
I think it was the lowest voter turnout in Ontarian history.
There we go. Yeah. So not great. Guess what? We have more people waiting longer and getting less services. Cuts to OHIP, cuts to people internationally when they're traveling to what OHIP covers. It's abysmal. And our taxes haven't gone down. It's not like he's cut our taxes. We are spending more money to get less services, and per capita, we're spending less than most places across the country. So it's BS to say, oh, well, other people are probably having the same problems. They're not. BC is not having the same problems as us. Alberta isn't even having the same problems as us. Ontario is in a unique situation of its own making, and it's all because of Ford.
We're seeing privatization of the healthcare system here. They are copying the system that Quebec started putting in, and has shown reports of them saying, no, this was actually more expensive than if we just funded our healthcare. We're going ahead with it anyways because there are some very wealthy donors giving money and showing up for segundos, and some very wealthy people. There is a lot of money to be made off of healthcare, and we've seen that with past premiers, like the premier the previous conservative premier privatized long-term care and is currently sitting on the board of a massive long-term care home.
And his wife is running one of the largest private nursing agencies in Ontario, and private nursing is now super popular here. So I wonder who's profiting.
Yeah, it's weird these things that like they literally are doing like the corrupt politician thing of like ruining systems and then just leaving government and owning those systems themselves. Like there's no curtain over it. They just hope that people don't know it is.
That's terrible. And so where does that leave it now then? Because like the average person probably just thinks of the public healthcare system as failing rather than just rapid privatization, right?
Yeah, I think people say, oh, well, it's always been bad. And we forget that it's worse.
And we forget that it can be better. Like, this is not the system that every private or every public healthcare system in the world has. Like, I have friends who moved here from the UK, and I know that the NHS has its own problems, but when they go into the emergency room, they do the normal Canadian or Ontarian thing, I guess, of bringing a book, bringing their Switch, their toys, their battery banks, and headphones, and then they just like walked in and were treated like half an hour, versus like here, I expect when I go to the ER to be there for anywhere between 3 and 8 hours.
Wow. Do y'all have walk-in clinics? Because that's what we have in BC.
We have tons of walk-in clinics. The problem is that the walk-in clinics won't do certain types of stitches. Even if you go to like the emergency care clinics, if you're bleeding to a certain degree, like if there's like an open wound, basically they won't treat you at all. They'll say go to emerge, because the province is hamstrung what they are and aren't allowed to do, and they also aren't allowed to operate beyond certain hours because the government won't fund them to be open 24/7. So even
It's
like pharmacies,
the hours for me. I go to the ER normally, and not a walk-in, because I mean, for one, the ER is much closer to me just by happenstance. But yeah, like the hours of it, if I have a problem past like 5 o'clock, it's like, okay, I could wait until tomorrow or whatever, or do all of these things. And I have a doctor I can make an appointment with, but there are also like some 2 million Ontarians without a private doctor, like a family doctor right now.
Well, I mean, so you look at what they did out in BC, right? So in BC, to solve the family doctor shortage, they started implementing a program where the government was incentivizing people who were licensed to work as family doctors to go and open up family clinics. The problem is that in Ontario, there's a lot of family doctors who are actually making less money than teachers after they cover all their costs, because doctors have to pay a lot of the fees that would normally be covered in other provinces by the province themselves. So as much as like, and listen, I am not the type of person to be like, yeah, we should make rich people richer. But doctors should be paid a good wage, not just a living wage. Doctors are highly
Nurses
trained,
too.
and if there's not a reason for
Yes.
you to, like
Everyone
you're
in
a
the
working
healthcare
adult.
system.
Exactly. And so we need to incentivize doctors. We need to incentivize nurses. We need to stop treating them poorly. It's the same with teachers. Pretty much, if you are a public servant in Ontario and you're not a firefighter or a cop, Ford has made it significantly worse and more impossible for you to do your job by underfunding not just the services around your job, but by going after your own paycheck and making it harder for you to keep that job. I have a business degree. I'd be making more money out in the private sector. I do this because I love this freaking job. If I wanted to make money, I wouldn't be doing this. And that goes for a lot of people who are educated. They say they don't want to become teachers, they don't want to become nurses because I'm not going to make enough money doing that. And that is an insane prospect to have in one of the richest places in the world.
And that's why you became a TikToker.
Well, I need to yell at somebody.
I was also going to say, anyone who doesn't know, you don't make money. Yeah, I know. You don't make money on TikTok in Canada. They don't pay you.
No.
Yeah.
I run everything.
I haven't won an election, so I haven't made money from doing politics and activism before. Like,
but the thing with Ford is he's already got that built-in brand, right? Like, I guess they don't even really care about that.
He's won multiple elections with no platform.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't have a platform last election. They said their budget was a platform, and before that, their platform was basically buck and beer, like, which is kind of I don't mean that as a joke. Like, I mean, like, that was one of the only policy things they announced.
I know it's actually gross that was so effective that, like, over here we all know that, right? Like in BC, we all know buck a beer.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's the guy who did buck a beer.
Well, and nobody takes it seriously.
It never happened.
Whenever people talk about anything that Ford has tried to implement, everybody looks back and says, yeah, that was a disaster. Buck a beer was a disaster. The license plates were a disaster. Like, there's not really a single thing that people look at and they're like, yeah, that policy rollout was really well done. But once again, why do people keep voting for him? He's a folksy son of a bitch who's able to get people to smile. He can shake their hands and look like an honest person. And then at the same time, we don't have people in the opposition who are really inspiring us. The NDP is trying to outflank the Liberals on the left. The Liberals are trying to outflank the Conservatives on the right of the center. We need to have parties that are more principled in their stances. Without people knowing what the brand truly represents, they have no reason to believe in it. And I would love to see the NDP return to being more socialist and democratic socialist in their roots. Really put forward that, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of messaging. They really try to message themselves as being centrist to try to win more seats. But the problem is the NDP can get 30% of the vote, but it won't be an effective vote share. If they get only 18% of the vote, but they're really targeting the ridings where their message is going to resonate, they'll win as much, if not more seats, and they'll have way more power in the legislature because they'll have a more commanding identity. And that's what I really want to see happen after this election. When all is said and done, I want the parties to reflect, and I want them to come back with a way to actually kick Ford's ass.
I feel like you should be working on the inside of the NDP somehow. I feel like you should be like a strategist.
Listen, I have spoken to both parties about strategy. They don't want to hear what I have to say because I am not speaking from the stance of a partisan who wants power. I'm speaking from the stance of somebody who I have my own interests. I want to see proportional representation. I want to see electoral reform. I want to see changes to a lot of things. And those interests don't inherently align with the current powers of the parties. I wish they did. And I'm sure that one day they will. I guarantee you that within the next 4 years, the NDP and the Liberals are both going to ask me to run, or they're both going to ask me for advice. And I'm not going to be able to do that until I have 2 small kids. I can't do it until my kids are older. I have a newborn.
Not easy.
That's number one. That's the main thing. But number 2 is I want the party. I want to believe in the party wholeheartedly. I don't want to be a partisan. I want to so wholeheartedly believe in the messaging that I can beat it on my chest. And right now, I don't think people see that. And it's so once again, it goes to the Carney thing, man. Like I see Carney and like I'm not the kind of person who believes all the things that he's saying, but I want to rally behind him. He's saying it in a way that's making me feel hopeful for Canada. And I don't see that on the provincial level.
I think part of that with Carney is just seeing that there is a chance to not have Polyev be in power.
That's like,
why can't Jagmeet Singh be that guy?
There's a serious thing there.
So the Jagmeet Singh's great. He's so personable, but he's unable to capture that imagination, and I think it's because
I think the country has Jagmeet Singh burnout because they've associated him with with Justin Trudeau, and they basically blame him for a lot of it. And there's a lot of effective, right wing messaging, especially on social media, that Jagmeet Singh has been doing this for a pension, which is just obviously absurd.
And
but like that,
Pierre has literally the largest pension in the house right now.
he's just a career politician.
In high school.
Yeah.
like me and Pierre are both millennials, and he had a pension before I graduated from high school, or maybe it might have been university, but still, before I was an adult in the world, even though we're part of the same generation, dude had a pension. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Living off the government dole,
Hey, he's got that multi-million-dollar mansion, and he's got the nannies, and he's got the cook. It's a good life. I don't blame him for wanting to live it as much as possible.
One last thing I wanted to ask you all about is related to Doug Ford. I'm seeing a lot of horrifying stuff coming out of Alberta when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights. Obviously, they're probably the most far right in the entire country. I'm not entirely sure where Doug Ford stands on that. He seems to kind of say things a little bit similar to Pierre at times, where he'll be like, I don't want to talk about gender and stuff, but he doesn't really take a really strong stance as so far as I've seen in terms of being aggressively anti-LGBTQ. Is that the case? Where is he on that?
I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
But
I think
I don't think he cares in a dangerous way where he will just do whatever gets votes. So he might not care right now, but he only shows that he doesn't care. He only does nothing right now because the culture war hasn't affected this level of government that much yet. I think it's very possible that if perception changes, that he will change. He hasn't taken any steps towards helping us. There have been bills that go through that the Conservatives immediately vote down concerning trans healthcare and like safety and the rise in hate crimes and all of that. That just he brushes aside immediately. But that is different than what's happening in a lot of the US where they're actively attacking us. It's a lot of stuff.
Ford is classically, when we use the word in its literal meaning, Ford is homophobic in so much that he is quite literally scared of gay people. But he is not outwardly, he will not outwardly attack them. I'm sure he might in his personal life, whether it's now or in the past, use homophobic language and slurs in his private talk. Like, I mean, like a lot of people talk like that, even people who feign to be progressive, right? But you have to remember that the Ford family historically would always pretend that they had like an annual family gathering at the family cottage during Pride Week, and that's why Rob and Doug could never go to the Pride Parade. And then magically, all of a sudden, he started attending the York Region Pride Parade, and it turns out that that's because the York Region Pride Parade is one of the only ones in the GTA that allows police to march in it. So like as much as I agree with Brooklyn on all those points, I think the other thing too is that like if it was politically viable, would Doug go after them? I don't think it would be top of mind unless there was a pressure from the party, specifically because Doug just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And Doug's not going to go after trans kids in sports because Doug just doesn't care. In Doug's mind, a trans child in a sport is probably going to get dominated by the other person in the sport, even if it doesn't matter in his mind if it's a trans man or a trans woman, specifically because I don't think Ford values people in the LGBTQ community as being equal to. And so he doesn't see LGBTQ people or trans people as a threat the way that some conservatives in Alberta and on the federal level view trans people as like an attack on their existence and identity. So that's why, like, yeah, Brooklyn, like you were saying, like Ford's kind of harmless in that regard. That doesn't mean that he's a good guy or an ally. It just means that he's indifferent and dismissive, which is also still not great.
Would that
like,
be the same thing with reproductive health? As soon as the party
starts pushing something one way, then he will just fall in line with that.
And is that the same thing with like reproductive health? Would that be something he would open up if?
No, I don't think Ford would ever. You have to remember that like he might be like a MAGA Republican, but he is more on the business side of things. Ford is not socially progressive, but he is not inherently regressive. So, for example, when they redid the Ontario curriculum, because the crazies in the party who helped him get elected, from Tanya Allen Granick or whatever her name was, they pushed him to do a review of WIN's sex ed curriculum. So they scrapped the sex ed curriculum, brought it back a year later, and we're like, we fixed all the woke stuff. And all they did was change something going from grade 1 to grade 3. It was mention of like gay people versus dynamic families. It was almost the same thing, but originally they removed consent. So originally they removed all the stuff about consent, and then they brought it back in and they made it a focal point of the sex ed curriculum. And it basically what that means to me is like Ford and the people around him saw the changes that the fringes of the party wanted, and he was like, yeah, that doesn't sound great. Even if he doesn't like, he's not fully on board with the rhetoric. He kind of saw it and he was like, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Like, that's kind of
you can vote. You can. I don't know when this goes up, so it might be past
it'll be today.
Voting.
Oh yeah, I'm going to work on this right after this.
So you can vote today or tomorrow, or on Thursday the 27th. There are a lot of different places that you can vote, but if you live in Kitchener Centre, you can vote for me. But the biggest thing I want to focus on is, please, Ontarians, please vote. You don't need your voter ID card that you might get in the mail. You can just go with your driver's license or photo ID card or anything. Like there's so many different things.
You actually don't even need that. You can go with somebody else who has their ID or their voter card, and that person can vouch for you. So even like, you can vote. There is no reason why anybody should not be voting in this province, because there is no barriers to voting.
Even if you are homeless, you can still go and vote. Like there are so many different ways to get the identification stuff. Please just go and vote. Me specifically, Brooklyn with an I, so BROOKLIN WR on most platforms. There's also Brooklyn Wallace, and Wallace is WALLIS. Brooklyn Wallace .ontariondp.ca or just votebrooklyn.ca brings you to my website, which you can donate. If you're from Ontario, you can donate, and that really helps show support. It helps the party know to support me, as well as you can sign up for emails or get a lawn sign if you're in the riding, or help volunteer. And there's lots of different volunteer stuff that anyone can do from across Canada.
And Franklin, where can people find your incredible work?
You can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat. I'm the same on every platform. Frank Domenic. Domenic. And on top of that, I just started launching some long form content on YouTube. So I do these deep dive videos once a week, as well as once a week I do interviews with a podcast that I have called Perfectly Frank. And that goes out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you find podcasts, as well as the video podcast being put out on YouTube. And if you want to help support me, as I hired an editor to start taking on all this stuff, because I do have a full-time job and 2 small children, I have a Patreon. It's Patreon Frank Domenic. You can find that. And literally every dollar that goes to the Patreon goes to paying my editor. I am not trying to make a profit off this. I just want to make more content and still have time to spend with my kids on the weekend and play some video games.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Attention everyone, this independent series is made entirely possible thanks to our patrons. It was produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bohem, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, and Words Greenwood. Not to mention all the other patrons who now see on screen. We couldn't have done this show without you. If you can help support the show, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus secret episodes as well as get the content before anyone else.